Hello, Dan Heon. Welcome to the Pineapple Podcast. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. For
Yeah,
our viewers, Dan is basically our money expert, a mortgage broker, and a real estate investor. So, Dan, looking forward to chatting today. I just wanted to, if you could introduce yourself to our members.
yeah, perfect. Thanks for having me, Mitch. I'm looking forward to today's, meeting and all of our wonderful discussions. You and I have so many discussions all the time. It's always fantastic. But to give people who don't know who I am a bit of background, I've been a real estate investor for about 26 years and have bought several properties, about 84 properties over that time. And everything from fix and flip to rent to own to land development. So you know what, it's hard to meet somebody that has done a deal that I haven't done. So I always like meeting new people and learning new things. So as part of why I love what I do and the finance side. And to touch on that, I have been helping in the mortgage broker capacity, helping my clients grow their business, real estate business, and helping them with their financing challenges and do some strategy and planning and map things out, for them to grow to their realistic goals to achieve their financial freedom.
Beautiful. Well, look, that already is amazing. I mean, now I want to kind of deep dive into all of the different strategies and what have you. But as you can appreciate today, for our viewers, we really want to get understanding of how did you get into this journey. So let's sort of step back a little bit and let's understand Dan, the young man. Kind of give us a sense of your mindset back when you were sort of deciding, okay, what do I do? When do I come into real estate, or how do I make that transition into real estate? Give us an idea of what made Dan become the mortgage broker and then become the investor.
That's a great story. You know what? And I really find myself to be very fortunate to have gone through that journey at such a young age. I think I began this journey, as I was telling you, at 26 years old. And it was very interesting. I worked for a company where there was a union mentality. It was actually the Canadian Auto Workers Union.
Yeah.
And my experience of a union was such that, get paid the most for doing the least. And that was my own personal experience. But it goes against every entrepreneur bone I have in my body that, I want to produce massive value out into the universe and have that value come back to me, tenfold, that sort of thing. So I didn't last long. And you know what? I worked in a plant with 800 men. And do you think I could find one, not just one, of those men that enjoyed their job, that loved going to work every day, that it was just everything they had to do to get up and go to work every day? Not one of those, Mitch. And I'll tell you, for a young guy just starting out and looking at a career path, that was not something that interested me at all. And so really, the work was very intellectual. It was about, I actually built locomotive engines for a living. So 16-cylinder turbo diesels, I can talk mechanics with the best of them. And it's funny, my clients often look at that and say, oh, he puts on a suit and tie and goes to work every day. A long, far different time from me putting on my coveralls and going to work every day and wheeling out a 400-pound toolbox. But I saw 800 men that didn't like their job, and I saw the future that was going to be me. Several years into the future, and it really didn't interest me, and it kind of actually, to be honest, kind of scared me that I didn't want to end up like them. And it was kind of the motivator. They say that there's two, and you will know this, there's two real motivators in this world. One is the fear, you want to do something because you're afraid that something may happen. And the other one is the pull, right? The push and the pull. The pull is like, oh, I really want to achieve this. I really want this. And you move towards it and it pulls, right? For me, it was the push. It was like, get the heck out of there, because I didn't want to end up, in a job that I hated. And on top of that, I would probably have to have waited 30 years before I actually got a Monday to Friday job working in the morning, until evening when all the other guys had retired and moved on. So, 26 years old, 30 years into the future, I wouldn't have much of a family life and do the things that I wanted to do. Having said all that, I tried every business under the sun. I think I did network marketing. I even learned and paid someone to teach me to be a professional gambler, if you can imagine that. So I think I've gone through every entrepreneur angle there is, until I finally came to the one, and I said, you know what? I said to myself, real estate has made the most amount of millionaires of any career path out there, and everybody knows that wealthy people own some sort of real estate. And I just had to figure out, as a young guy with not very much money and a decent job, how do I do that? And that's where I came across some organizations and other people that were doing it. And I'll tell you, that was the best thing that ever happened to me as a young person, because there was older people who were down that path. I would see a school teacher and she would own 10 houses, and I would meet an electrician and he would own 8 houses. And I thought to myself, how does a regular person like this own so much real estate? And it was kind of motivating, because I looked at myself and saying, hey, I'm a diesel mechanic, and if these regular people can do it, then I can do it. And I just need someone to teach me, and come heck or high water, I'm going to make it happen. So that was what started my journey so many years ago.
Dan, that is a brilliant sharing. Thank you for saying that. But I want to unpack this a little bit, because you've given us some really golden nuggets in that story. Because you're talking about a young man who's just landed a union job. Those are the best paying jobs according to the career professionals. Yet it did not sit with you. You were willing to give that up because you did not enjoy the environment, you did not enjoy the work. And so you're giving up at an early age, I don't know, maybe a $30, $40, $50 an hour job, which in a lot of people's world is really great security. And so people would say, okay, you know what? I am going to sacrifice my happiness. I am going to sacrifice that sort of value creation, because I'm going to pay the bills. I'll probably have a good vacation, and I could live a happy 9-to-5 sort of job. And with overtime, it's even better. But the entrepreneurial spirit in people is always gnawing at you to say, hey, let's break out. Let's go do something. We don't know what it is. And again, a nice thing you shared with us is when you came out of that environment, you didn't know what you were going to do. Like you said, you paid a guy to teach you to become a professional gambler. How cool is that, right?
Yeah.
But again, you're just knowing that there is something. So what I want to get at for our viewers as well is to understand there's a big element of faith in what we do. And you honestly demonstrated that. You came out of an environment on the faith and belief that there is something better for you, and you're going to go after it. Now, at 26 is probably the perfect age, because again, responsibility wise, it's kind of like Dan is taking care of himself. So easier to make the decision versus many people who are later in years, they have a family, but they still don't have that satisfaction of the job. They might be making great money, but inside of them, it's messy, it's fuzzy, because they're just looking for something better to do, right? And even for me as well, I've had that gnawing inside of me for a long time as well. And I've made transitions. I've sort of done a bridge work where I bridge myself from employment to eventually getting into real estate. But looking back at your story at age 26, I mean, how cool is that, right? So when you transitioned out of that job and now you didn't have that paycheck coming in anymore, what was that little period of uncertainty and transition? How did it make you feel? What was the motivation every day to get up and go search for something or do something else, or figure out, okay, maybe gambling isn't the thing. Maybe I want to do a little bit of something. But I just want to capture, the mind, the transitioning of that job and how it impacts people, because that's the most nerve-wracking period for most people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there is a bit of fear and trepidation where a person, the uncertainty, that's the word.
Yep.
I really had both motivations working for me. It was the push away from the career path I didn't want, plus the pull of the lifestyle and freedom that I did want. And both of those moved me down that path. So it was really, that's, you talk about what gets a person out of bed and doing the things that they want to do. I think it's those, the push and the pull for me is what really got me moving ahead to the journey that I've now been on for several years. But I was very fortunate when I did do all my learning and testing and figuring out which path until eventually ending up in real estate. I still worked, so a lot of people tell me, oh, I want to do real estate, and they quit their job cold turkey. And I'll tell you the stress levels that can cause, wow, especially if you have a wife and children. And, you and I have been working with many couples over the years now. And that's the biggest thing is like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this, but, I can't. It's there's too much at risk, that sort of thing. But for me, I did a transition. So I think a year and a half while I was working, at the job that, I wanted to get away from, I had bought 8 or 9 houses at the time while I was working. So, the difference is I would go to my job and work. In my case, I was working, it actually worked out really good because of the shift work, working 11 at night till 7 in the morning when the next shift came in. So I would have my days free to go real estate shopping and look for houses and build my team. And then go sleep for a bit and then go back to work and do it all again. So there was a transition period. I don't want to tell everybody, oh, I just snapped my fingers and I owned a whole bunch of real estate. It's, I wish it was that easy, but you know what? It's all about setting yourself up for success and, moving down that road and checking into, what's going to be the best angle, what's going to be the best property, how does a person buy 8 houses, these kinds of things.
I want to touch on that a little bit, Dan, because again, what you're unpacking here for us and for our viewers is absolutely amazing, because I always counsel people as well. You need to create a bridge plan. The reality is, as you pointed out, you cannot go cold turkey and say, okay, I'm stopping this career and I'm moving on to something else. You always have to create that bridge, because again, expenses are continuing to run. So you need to know how you're going to transition over to that. So to do this on a part-time basis or to get started is the ideal scenario. And you did an amazing job hitting 8 properties. But let's bring it back a little bit so viewers can really get to understand what was the journey like on the first deal? Because the first deal is always the nervous deal. It's the deal where people get uncertainty. Their mind starts to play games when they're about to sign on that line and say, okay, I'm going to take on, I guess back then, maybe a $300,000-$400,000 mortgage. Today, it's like $1 million mortgage, right? So walk us through, how does this guy who's got a day job, never had experiences in real estate, he just has something inside of him that just says, look, we got to do something here because I'm not happy. And so you get into the real estate. So walk us through what was your first deal, and kind of like what was the experience behind it as well, if you were renting and so on.
Yeah, I had bought my very first home. So I owned a home already. So, at 21 years old, I bought my very first home. So I think that was super exciting. Actually, a funny story on that. My mortgage that I bought personally was one of the first mortgages in Canada to go through at 5% down. So that'll tell you about how long ago I bought that house. But it was very interesting and a cool process. And what was even more amazing is, and I think this had a big impact in my career path, is I ran into a very good friend of mine who was my mortgage broker at the time, but now moving ahead is my very good friend. And so he's been inspiration and a leader in my life over this whole journey. And I watched this man coach me and teach me and guide me to get those first 8 properties. And that was amazing. And it always stuck in the back of my head at what a resource and help this man was in helping me achieve my dreams. And I just thought that is a cool path. But let's back up to the first house, because your question was, how did that feel? And I worked with thousands of real estate investors, over this past 20-year career. And everybody, including myself, always remembers the first one. The first one is daunting. It's mind blowing. It's, I have my family and my friends telling me, Dan, what are you thinking? This is crazy. You're bringing in another, I think at the time, Mitch, it was $135,000 mortgage, so that was all it was. And that was on top of my already, current mortgage. So this was a second mortgage. And, what if the tenants don't pay? And what if things break? And, what if this and what if that? And all the fear, and bless my family and bless my friends for sharing that, because it really comes out of love. And it wasn't until I recognized that all of those, what you and I would call negativity, negative comments and all that, came from their love because of the protection. And that was mind blowing what I was about to be going to do. And that they just, couldn't fathom that I was going to take on more debt. My parents are from that era that, debt is bad and don't you dare take on more debt. And, so it was a big ordeal and scary, because everybody I knew and cared about thought that I was, had gone mad or something like that. So, but you know what, at the same time, I had on the other side of my court, I had all of my support. I had my coaches, my mentors, my mortgage broker, my friends, my new friends that I had come to get to know. And that kind of really helped me. So on one side, I had the scary family and some friends. And on the other side, I had my real estate investor group and my friends and comrades and teachers.
So Dan, I just want to unpack a little bit about what you're saying, because again, the journey in real estate is really something that if you get the help from the right people, it could really make the experience absolutely amazing, even though it's nerve-wracking. And you pointed out something that I just want to touch on a little bit as well. You had a mentor and a coach, somebody who knew what they were doing and was basically helping you come along the way. And that's the beauty with real estate. There's so much opportunities for people, but the biggest challenge is to get somebody that can lead you into the pathway for becoming a coach, or to help you along the way. And I want to unpack that a little bit, because I just want people to understand, because I've done it where my wife and I, we started nervously doing it on our own. Then we connected with a few people that knew what they were doing, and then it became much easier. Then eventually we got into the Keyspire world. As you know, those guys do an amazing job with giving people the opportunity to learn. And so even today, I coach with them. But really and truly, what you're saying, and the piece I want to really capture is, what difference did you find it made in your life with just getting somebody to kind of lead you down the pathway so that today you're more successful?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. So back then, I talked about the school teachers that owned 7 or 8 properties, and the electrician that owned, 9 or 10 properties. And I belonged to a group back in the day that was called the Real Estate Investment Network. And so every month we'd meet together, as a group in person. And there was a leader of the group. Back in the day, it was a guy by the name of Tim Johnson, and he really created a good system, or support system. That's what I'll think, where the more seasoned veterans were helping the rookies, and almost like a support role. And you could ask them any question, and they would give you your business card to call them on the off times, because we'd only meet once a month. And, if you ran into a problem mid-month, there had to be a resource to call. And there was a lot of valuable teaching and training that came out of that group. But most of it was, people who had been there and done it, as you say, helping the new members come on and gain that confidence and guiding to make that big scary move like we talked about on that very first one. So really part of what I'm looking at now as an older, member of the real estate community is helping people who haven't been there. It's almost like, and you'll know this, is paying it forward. It's like somebody helped me when I was just getting going, and now I'm that person helping the other people achieve the level of success that I've seen in my lifetime, in my career. That would be amazing. And I talked about my mortgage broker friend, and I talked about, everyone else that was part of my team and my influence community. So, just as you said, it's so impactful, so true that, if you have that support, you have that help, you can hit levels in your career that you never thought possible.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, this is what the mindset is all about with regards. I mean, we're investors. At the end of the day, this is the vehicle we've chosen as entrepreneurs to sort of build our future, build our presence here. But what we love with real estate is there's so many pluses, so many opportunities to win, to develop and to grow through wealth, right? There is probably no other vehicle because, again, you're leveraging 20% down payment and you're buying 100% assets. So for $200,000, you can buy $1 million, right? And then the vehicle of $1 million grows, but you're in it for 200,000. So what you've shared with us, and I'm sure our viewers are going to absolutely get some value in this story as well, is build a bridge plan to get into the real estate space you want to get into. Align yourself with a coach. And in today's world, it's absolutely brilliant. People have really come to value the expertise and the experience of people who are in the coaching business, and they dedicate themselves full time to help people along with doing their own investments. And it's exactly what you said. Today, you are now that guy who's training somebody else and helping somebody else grow and develop their business, as am I. So we're kind of on the same pathway when you think about it, where we love the investments, but we know it's a community, so we got to help each other out. But you brought up a very interesting point, $136,000 for a house. Today, that's the down payment, right? Or not even in some places.
Exactly.
But I want to bring it now to like today. Dan Heon, the money expert, the guy who makes the deals happen, deals with your mortgages. And again, kind of like walk me through what that property would have been if you had. Have you held on to that property, or is it sold?
In today's market, let me guess, it'd probably be 5 or 550.
So five times the value. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and this
heavens,
is
Mitch.
this is the power of real estate, right? Now, the one beautiful thing I know with you is you're not afraid of dealing with any type of deal. So give us a sense now of some of the things that you work on or that you find are pretty interesting for people now coming into the journey. What are some of the blocks that they might encounter, and what are some of the things that you would have been able to do in the past in fact, in the current atmosphere, being able to do so that they could move ahead with a deal? Because as we know, that's the trickiest piece of the whole real estate.
Yeah. You know what? When you ask that question, something comes to my mind. I generally, I can ask somebody how many properties they own, and I can almost, very accurately tell them what challenges they're facing. To give you an idea, if somebody tells me 1 to 3 properties, then the challenge that that person is going to be having in order to grow their business is most generally, coming up with the down payment money from themselves, how to access trapped equity in their own home, a little bit of nervousness and building their team. So, if somebody's in that 1 to 3 properties, that's generally a beginner, and they're facing those challenges that I just mentioned. And, once you get 3, then, there's a little bit of confidence there. You've got your team typically there, and all of your money is out working typically, right? Because you buy 3 $1 million houses, there's not a lot of down payment left, right, Mitch? So, if somebody is telling me, hey, I own 6 or 7 properties, but I'm running into a challenge, or vice versa, if somebody is at 3 and they want to get through to the next level, Then they've got to start learning with OPM or other people, and working with joint ventures, and working with creative financing and all these kinds of things. So really, if somebody says I own 8 properties, what they're telling me is that they've almost broken through that barrier to get to working with other people, joint venture agreements, and saying, hey, let's do this deal together. I will use my expertise, your money, and we'll go make some profit together. And then, it's always funny to hear anybody break through I would say that will get you to about 8 properties. And if you move through the 8 properties and to break through that barrier, I don't care how good you are with working with other people's monies, you cannot work a full-time job and move past 8 properties. There's not enough hours in the day. So, typically to get past 8 properties, a person needs 100% to have a team. You have to have that bookkeeper. You have to have the property manager. You can't be taking care of 10 properties and working a full-time job, plus have a wife, plus have children. It's like there's not enough hours in the day. So if somebody tells me, that they've broken through that and they own 10 or 11 properties, I know that they've got systems. They've got the systems in their business. They've got somebody to take care of finding the deals. They've got somebody to take care of the financing of the deals. They've got the property management, and all they're doing is coordinating the deals and hooking up their team and their professionals and bringing on more joint venture partners. So that is the person that gets, past that 8 to 10 property level, is really systematizing their business and treating it like a business, right? You can't, work through to get to that situation unless you systematize your business. So it's always interesting just asking people, hey, how many properties do you have? And within what I've experienced, knowing the challenges they're having with their business. So it's very interesting. But like you said, going back to the beginner, the first one is, how do I get my financing? How do I access the trapped equity? Should I rent out the house I'm living in? All of these kinds of questions come to mind. And, that's where, I get to have those amazing discovery calls, I call them, with my clients all day long. People will say, what do you do for a living? I talk on the phone, and, I give people advice and weigh out their pros and cons. And they typically, they'll share with me where they're at financially. And then I always ask, where are you going? Tell me what your real estate life is going to look like 5 to 10 years from now. And then the path kind of, unfolds from there, I guess, right? What are the steps? And there might be 2 or 3 different ways for a person to get to that end result. But what I'd like to do is saying, hey, if we buy a multifamily, if we fix and flip, or if we buy turnkey, in a lot of cases, some people love their career. They don't ever want to change their career. In that case, you know what? I don't want to advise them, hey, quit your job and do real estate full time. No, I want them doing what they love to do. Meanwhile, their real estate portfolio just builds and builds and builds in the background, right? I mean, that's the dream, is to have, a mentor of mine said, you want to have the money working harder for you than you're working for the money, right? So that's just so important. When your money is working harder for you, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a very, very important statement for sure. Because ideally, and you've said an important point too. There are people who absolutely love their jobs, and again, there's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5. That's where most of us would start, right? But again, if you love it, then you're in the right place. If you don't love it, then you need to create a plan that gets you out of it in a very healthy and sure way. Because again, one of the things we talked about is, okay, financing your first deal. Well, when you start talking to the A lenders, they definitely want to see a T4. They want to see stability. They want to know that you have income coming in and that you're a stable individual, right? So it really does add a lot of value today in terms of you getting into the first. But again, what I love is you've identified a few core things. When you get to number 8, that's when you really have to make the decision. If I want to grow some more, now I need to transition, right? So that's your bridge. Your bridge is basically, what can I do in my day job, and what are the people that I need around me in order to get me from, let's say, from the primary home to 5 to 8 properties, because by then it becomes 5 to 8 banks. You're generating income, you're generating wealth, and you can start to play with the money to decide whether or not now I want to get into commercial, I want to do other really interesting things in real estate, as you say, joint venturing. And so, do I need to now make that decision to transition over? And if I transition over, I need a solid plan now to say, okay, now that I am a full-time entrepreneur, what is my plan? How am I going to elevate my business? How am I going to double my income? How am I going to realize my dream over the next 5 years, right? Because real estate is not an overnight quick business. It's a long-term business, but it pays in no other industry can pay the way it is paying for us now. So I do like that sharing for sure, and to that point, I guess, for our viewers as well, Dan, maybe what you can share with us, give us the top 2 or 3 tips and tricks that as investors, and let's frame it off into, here's a tip for the early investor, here's a tip for the medium investor, and here's a tip for the seasoned investor.
All right, let's get into that. That's amazing. I think a lot of my advice that I would give to the growing investor comes from my own personal journey, and that comes from the creative side.
Yeah.
Often people say, "How the heck did you go from being a mechanic and a full-time investor?" Well, I guess at that time I was a part-time investor. I would do that when I wasn't working. And so I was just a busy guy, and I built up my 8 properties. And the segue from that 8 properties, into growing my business past that was quitting my full-time job. And that is actually one of the best and scariest moves right there. But you know what? I had built up the business to 8 or 9 properties, and I had enough cash flow that it covered my basic essentials as a single guy, and allowed me to quit that job and go do real estate full time. So that was interesting. But as well as I do, and most of the people on this call, that if you don't have a job, how much money is the bank going to give you? Not much, right?
That's right.
So,
they don't even want to talk to you.
Yeah, so here I am, loving real estate. It's making me passive income like nobody's business, and I'm quitting. I quit my job, so life is good. I'm a full-time real estate entrepreneur, and no banks will give me money to grow my business. So, Mitch, things became a little bit frustrating in that perspective, and that's where the world of creative finance came in. And to be honest, how I grew my business from property number 8 to about 17 was using seller financing, and so if anybody is just starting out and they're having challenges, and you don't have a job and the banks won't give you money, I would suggest that seller financing is an amazing strategy. And it's one that I had to learn, I had to use, because there was no other way at that point for me to get financing. The banks were telling me, no, I don't have a job, I own too many houses. That was the roadblock that I was having in my own business. And it worked so well.
Just to interrupt you there on that, Dan, just for the viewers as well. So when we're talking seller financing now, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, essentially what Dan is doing is he's having the person who's selling it become the banker or the financier for the project, which is a whole different way of creative financing as well.
Exactly. So instead of asking the bank to lend you $400,000 to buy that house, I'm asking the seller, saying, hey, you've owned this house for 30 years. You don't own a mortgage on it. Why don't I write you checks every month and you can be my bank? And I'll tell you, when you propose that and you say that, typically somebody who has a lot of equity in their home is, close to around retirement age. And if you said, hey, I'm going to put $1,500, $2,000 a month into your pocket every month, and I'm going to use that house as collateral. If I don't pay you, you come and take that house away from me, and I lose everything I put into it. that's a very good deal for them. And so you obviously, you can't find that deal by phoning up your local realtor and they have 20 of those waiting for you. That's not the case, right? So I wish
Right.
it was that easy. But learning how to market and how to find those deals and know what to say and how to say it, and really, it's an education, Mitch. I was educating how these guys could turn all that equity into retirement income and allow me to own that house and for them to have a great investment. And that's how I grew my business, using that strategy for several years. So probably about 3 to 5 years, I was just out hunting for these deals and, negotiating them and working for them. And eventually, I didn't even realize this, but as a young entrepreneur, you have to pay these loans back at one point, right? And so this is the transition of how I became a mortgage broker, because, oh my word, I owned all these properties and I created amazing deals. And all of a sudden, within a 6-month period, the sellers were saying, "Hey, you have to pay me back that money. Little Billy's going to college. I need that money to buy a new car," or all these loans were coming due, and I freaked out. I absolutely I do not want to sell these properties. I worked so hard to find them, set them up, negotiate them. I do not want to sell them, and the whole world of creative finance took another level for me. And I'll tell you, back in 2001. A good friend of mine, Valdin Palm, and we pioneered what is now today known as the RRSP mortgage, the registered mortgage or the registered investment mortgage. And that was back in 2001. And what I did back then is I would talk to people and I would say, "How is your RSP performing?" And in 2001, they had the .com bust. And so all these tech stocks weren't doing the price earnings per price like they should be. And so the NASDAQ was dropping and people were losing money in their RSPs. And what I did is I proposed to them and I said, "Hey, how about you take that $100,000 in the RSP, you put a mortgage on my house with that RSP, and I will write you checks every month, and it's guaranteed by my house. If I stop paying, you come and take my house away, and you get your money back." And I'll tell you, if you're an investor and you want to sell seller financing or RSP or financing, you come to the seller or to the investor and you say, "I'm putting all my hard work and that property on the line as collateral." They really get your sincerity and your drive to make that deal happen. And that's what I did. And so what I did, Mitch, is I took all of that seller financing and I replaced it with RSP investor mortgages. And I kept the properties. My sellers were happy. My new investors were happy. But what had happened is, as you can imagine, the seller financing for somebody that really wanted me to buy their house was low interest rates. And at the time in 2001, I think the prevailing interest rates were about 14% for my second mortgages. And so my cash flow went down. And I went from this independent cash flowing entrepreneur at a young age. I was financially, getting my investment company paying for my lifestyle, to, oh my gosh, I saved my houses, but I have no cash flow, no income, no money. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? And this whole world of creative financing took another leap, Mitch. And what happened is I knew there was a huge market for all these people that had RSPs but didn't know what to do with them. They were losing money and they were frustrated and they're angry that there has to be more choice in the world. And on the other side, don't forget, I had been investing for many, many years, probably about 7 or 8 years up until this point. And so I had a friend database that was larger than anything in the real estate investment world. And I just had to put the two together, and flashbacks keep coming back saying, I know all these people that have RSP money. I know all these people that want to borrow RSP money. I just need to get in the middle and be the gateway. And in order to do that, I need a mortgage broker license. So to be 100% honest with you, I got into being a mortgage broker only to be in the world of creative finance. That's what got me into that world. And it was to save my business. But at the next phase was really to help investors put their money together with real estate borrowers, investor borrowers, and create an income in between. Because at that time, I told you I'd saved my real estate business, but had lost my income. So, really, I guess, to wind it right back, if I'm starting out, I want to work with sellers who will finance you. I mean, at the very beginnings, for that very beginner, use as much bank financing as you can get, and get as much of that as you can, because that's the least expensive money, and our return on investments are so much greater. But when you hit the wall, I always call it the wall, bang, if something's stopping your business, how do I keep going? Bust through that wall, use the seller financing, use the things that, us veterans have been using when we hit that same exact problem to go through there. And, when your, vendor financing dries up, then get into this world of RSPs. And there's billions, Mitch, there's billions and billions of dollars waiting there to help you and I with our investment, real estate investment businesses grow to the level that we desire. It's amazing. And I've been doing it since 2001. What is that? 20 years now. So, I know these gray hairs don't show it, but anyhow, it's a great strategy. And I think one that's underutilized. And, now that we've gone through this whole transition, just a little tidbit into the very advanced real estate investor out there. I said, we talk about setting up a corporation, and you can take these registered funds that people are searching for you. There's more people with money searching for an investor like you than you looking for those people, really, honestly. So, just keep that in the back of your mind. But for that seasoned investor, using those registered funds, either by way of mortgage to do the project that you're looking for, or like you and I have discussed many times, corporate structure like an LPGP, putting that registered funds in as shares into the corporation, and you being the advisor to the corporation. So there's so many different ways creatively to take your business from where it's at right now to that next level. And you just have to find, somebody who's been there and done that, who's willing to teach and share. You know what? It's most, disheartening when I find somebody that's an expert in their field and they keep everything tight to their chest and won't share and won't teach that. I just don't understand the logic in that.
And it's so true, because the majority of people on the sort of the outside, the REI they really do try to keep all these secrets, so to speak, for their own development, but they don't realize there's actually more power in sharing, because the more people are aware of it, is the more they will add to the pool.
Yeah, so, you and I would call that the mindset, right? The abundance mindset, rather than the scarcity mindset. That's really what we're talking about right there.
That's exactly it. And mindset is really the core enabler for us as investors. But, I want to summarize it really. I mean, and again, thank you for over delivering, So top 2 to 3 tips and techniques. And you're giving us a little bit more than that, which is brilliant. So essentially, number 1, build a plan to start out part-time, because you can't give up your day job. Look at seller financing as an option. Learn it. Find the people that know about it so that you can educate yourself, and then you can explore that. And then get into registered funds mortgages. These are areas where you definitely need to learn it. You need to understand it before you can take advantage of it. And then for the advanced guys, create GPs, LPs, and actually set it up so that you have the ability to use either cash from investors or registered funds. How brilliant a strategy is that, Dan? Obviously, we'll have to probably do a few more sessions to unpack a lot of these tips and tricks that you as a seasoned investor is able to explore. And I must say that, for myself as well, getting into those techniques has really opened up the doors for many, many opportunities that otherwise would not be possible through the traditional way as we think, because the bank is really set up for the consumer, right? And the consumer mindset, as you know, get a mortgage, pay off it as quickly as possible, and live debt-free. The investor mindset get as much good debt as possible, keep expanding and growing, because that's how you create generational wealth. So again, Dan, this is just absolutely brilliant. Your sharing, I am really, really touched to know that you've given us so much value today. I'm sure all of our viewers here appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. I really hope that they enjoy this segment for sure. And again, guys, leave your comments below. And if you want to get in touch with Dan Heon, check the comments below. We will have all of his contact information for you so you can connect with him. Again, he works across the country, so you're not limited to any one province. And his ability to reach financing from the very simple residential mortgages to the very complex commercial side is what Dan is all about. And Dan, again, thank you for being my guest here at the Pineapple Podcast. And I look forward to connecting again with you in the future, and we can unpack some of these amazing tips and tricks that you've given us.
You bet, Mitch. It's been an absolute pleasure to converse and share and kind of share some of the nuggets that I've seen and witnessed and experienced over the 26 years. And I love it, and I love what you're doing. It's really coming from a place of enlightenment and empowerment and teaching and sharing all the things that you're learning, of course, on your journey, as I am doing with my journey. And I just appreciate knowing you and having you in my sphere of friends. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dan. And to our viewers, wishing you all great successes in your journey as a real estate investor. Thank you.